Imagine these three things coexisting. You're working full time, your employer's raking in cash, making hundreds of millions of dollars, and you receive such a small cut of that money that you can only afford the bare necessities. You're not able to put any of it away. Up until 2 years ago, this described college sports. Everyone involved had seen their pay stub increase, but the athletes weren't getting any share. They were amateurs who were getting paid in education, not cash. Last summer, new legislation was passed that reversed the 100-year-old policy, allowing college athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness. The policy is commonly referred to NIL for short. Now, I've grown up around sports my whole life. My parents played sports in college. I play sport currently in college. My siblings both are and will play in college. We watch tons of sports, listen, read, you name it, I'm dialed into it. So even though this is an off-the-field thing, I've still been tracking this new rule since its inception, all the way until it got passed, and I've seen firsthand the impact that it has had on intercollegiate athletics. That impact, however, has been that powerhouse schools will be cemented into the upper echelon, and certain athletes in football and basketball are able to cash in. But overall, NIL hasn't really dramatically changed anything for the large majority of college athletes. Moving forward, we'll take a look at what college athletics looked like before NIL, what in the world NIL is, and the things today in college athletics that are different than they were a few years ago. So what is NIL? According to the NCAA, the governing body of college sports, athletes are allowed to profit off their name, image, and likeness. So what does that mean? This means that college athletes can engage in ventures with companies who seek to use the athlete's name, picture, or something even like a nickname to market their product. Essentially, this just means that college athletes can be sponsored, appear in commercials, and promote products on their own social media. This does not mean that the university can pay for play. CBU cannot write a check to the top basketball recruit that's so large that they should choose to come here. However, when recruiting this player, Riverside Toyota can promise to pay the player to do commercials that might entice them to come to CBU. Riverside Toyota cannot use a CBU name, logo, and uniform in its promotional material, just the athlete's name, image, and likeness. So why was this rule implemented? Since its inception, the NCAA has maintained that student athletes are amateurs. They're getting a fair share by the education that they receive. And for a while, you could make that argument. The industry was big in popularity and spirit, but financially it hadn't caught up. When live TV began to become mainstream in the 50s and 60s, more and more money came along with it, but the last few decades have seen college sports explode. According to a Statista article referencing an NCAA report, as you can see on the screen, member athletic departments, right there in the circle, made almost $19 billion in revenue in 2019. And according to USA Today, in 2020, college football coaches were the highest public paid employees in 40 of the 50 states. It's clear there's money to be made, and everyone was making it except for the players, the actual product. NIL is this way for athletes to make money while preserving the amateur model that the NCAA has held on to. It's still not pay for play like pro sports, but it is a way for the athletes to make some money while that they are still in college. So before NIL, what did it look like? Before you got to campus, you had to get recruited. Schools recruited players based off of the prestige of the program, the university, the location, the coaches, alumni, etc. How do you like the university? How do you like the coaches? How would you fit in here? What are your goals? Those are some of the things that athletes would be asked in the recruiting process. Powerhouses and traditional blue bloods, for example, were determined based off of history. But just like in anything, there are always periods of time where some of them were good, others were bad, and they would go up and down just like any other team. Third, players getting paid was not common. Anything that happened was under the table, and it came in the form of boosters paying for things directly, like picking up the check at dinner, dropping off groceries with money in the grocery bag, stuff like that. Under the table, kind of shady, and it would only happen to the top football and top basketball players. So what does it look like in action? Who even has NIL deals? Well, according to an article from Yahoo Finance, football and men's basketball players account for roughly 2/3 of all NIL money, 63% of NIL activity, and 93% of donor compensation. So simply put, unless you're a basketball or football player, you're probably not seeing a huge check. However, NIL is changing the competitive landscape in some of these sports now, and it is reasonable to think that the trend will continue and the powerhouse schools will continue to get bigger in other sports as well. The schools that are big now, good now, as a result, are growing. This growth in money will lead to an increase in support from the community where NIL deals come from that will entice recruits. We've already seen college football become kind of the top 10 schools and everyone else, and that trend would seem likely to continue with the money those schools have and the fan support, and now NIL advantages. Schools can recruit using NIL opportunities as a part of their pitch, and this spring and summer, more players than ever transferred after having success at their primary smaller school, and then they go to a bigger school, one of these powerhouses, to cash in on their success in a big NIL market. In other words, the rich got richer. Overall, not much has changed for the majority of sports, for the majority of athletes. While in other major sports, it has kind of cemented the competitive landscape as being the big boys and everyone else, most athletes are not making money. Football and basketball players certainly are, but when your grandpa complains that these dang kids are spoiled and back in his day, the backup goalie on the soccer team wasn't getting paid thousands of dollars, you can tell him, don't worry, grandpa, that's still not happening.